Hello there and welcome to Euronet Plus. We are here back in Strasbourg for the first plenary session after the EU elections. We're going to focus on the new European Parliament's composition and mainly with the question about is it the European Parliament being more critical towards the European Union? To debate on that, I've got the pleasure to introduce my two male guests, Philippe Lamberts. You have been elected as the new vice-chair of the Greens group.
Thank you. Well,
hello and congratulations.
thank you.
And Mr. Sajjad Karim, you are a British member of the Conservatives and Reformists Group.
I am, and I apologize for being male.
Hello and welcome to you. So, before we starting the debate, I would like to have a really short reaction about the new re-elections of the socialist Martin Schulz. Are you satisfied with these re-elections, Mr. Lamberts?
Well, yes and no. I think the process was a bit a process of three political groups convening in back rooms and making a deal amongst themselves. I think it's not the nature of this parliament to have a sort of bloc that basically hermetically is close to any other form of debate or influence. And I would have much preferred a more open process. Well, we presented our candidate. Well, we believe it should have been a more open process. But they closed all doors even before we started working here.
Do you also share the idea of Mr. Lamberts that the process was too close?
I think really now, for the sake of the European people, we've got to move beyond the personalities. And we have to now start concentrating on the actual programme that we need to put in place. That is both in relation to the Commission nomination of Mr. Juncker and indeed Mr. Schulz's nomination and election here. The processes are unsatisfactory, and these are some things we have to come back to and we have to deal with in the future, but it's the second day now and we have got to move on for the sake of the European people, because we do not have the benefit of time to be able to just linger over these issues whilst the programme still remains in the background.
But Mr. Schulz would be the good man to lead this European Parliament again for the 2.5 years?
Well, he's duly elected, and that's the point on which I have to move forward. I was his main competitor.
Yeah, of
There's
course.
a reason as to why I was his main competitor, but he is duly elected. Now we move forward.
So let's start the debate now about this issue, because we can see that this new European Parliament, is quite changing, moving. So it seems that being more critical towards Europe works. As your group, Conservatives ones, they become the third group of the European Parliament, and you overtook the Liberals and Democrats. So criticizing Europe works?
No, we're not criticizing Europe at all. What we are doing is reflecting within the chamber here what people are saying outside of this chamber. And it's just so unfortunate that so many MEPs in this House are still not willing to recognize the message that has been sent. The vast majority of European citizens didn't feel compelled to take part in the ballot that delivered these MEPs here. Out of the minority that took part, there was a sizable chunk that turned to the extremes, simply because we were not listening to them. The MEPs are not reacting to what they are saying. And this is what we've done straight away. On the very first day we have come back here, this Parliament has sent a sign to say we're going to carry on exactly as we were, regardless of what the European people want. We have to change.
Yeah, we have to change. So in part of it, it's like criticizing the Europe that we have now.
Well, a healthy criticism is a self-analysis. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Without a self-analysis, we can never move forward. We can never react to what the demands of our people are.
Do you share the idea with Mr.
Well, absolutely. We need to take a hard look at the way, not just the way Europe functions, because that's the institutional setup and probably the lack and the increasing democratic deficit that we are witnessing. But the other part of it, and it's linked, it's about the policies that are carried out. And quite clearly, my interpretation of the results, it's not the idea of European integration that has been rejected, rather the policies that make sure that actually it's the weakest in society that end up paying the bulk of the price of the transition towards a more sustainable economy. And actually, not only the transition is going in the wrong direction, but it is socially unjust. It's really the weakest in society that end up paying most of the price. And this is, I believe, the main engine of the rejection of Europe as it stands today. So if we are not able to recognize the shortcomings of the European integration, there's no way we can fix it.
However, the Greens, your group, your you're quite pro-European,
Absolutely.
big pro-European, but it doesn't seem to work anymore as your group dropped to the 6th position.
Well, yes,
so
it's
how do you
true.
explain that?
I think it's other reasons. It's not because we have a firmly pro-European yet critical stance towards what is being done in Europe. I think that the shortcomings of the Greens have more to do with the fact that nowadays the heart of the debate is about social and economic issues, and more often than not the Greens are being seen as outsiders on these issues. We are seen as a niche party mostly dealing with environmental challenges, and so far we have been unable to sufficiently position ourselves on the economic and social front. And I think it has more to do with that rather than with our pro-European yet critical stance. You will never hear blind pro-European Greens. We are not just embracing neither the institutional setup nor the policies that are carried out at face value. We don't endorse them because we believe that they are wrong.
Yes, let me pass the word now to Mr. Karim. So do you think so pro-European, so your group is seen, is considered as a big Eurosceptic group, so pro-Europeans doesn't work anymore?
Well, what I say is that whatever sort of Europe people are trying to construct, you cannot construct any form of Europe unless you take the European people with you.
And can you, sorry to disturb, can you construct and plan a new Europe with extreme right party as the Danish People Party?
Well, we certainly have members from the Danish People's Party today sitting in the ECR group. And our group has fundamental values. They are non-discriminatory. They hold values that are based upon the core principles of the European Union. And if there is any part of the ECR group that tries to move away from those, then I'm afraid there will be no room for them in the ECR. I'm abundantly clear about this, and we are not going to compromise on those principles at all. And if I can just give you one sign of the huge movement that has taken place within these parties, the same parties and the same individuals who only a few years ago were saying certain things about, for instance, immigrants and Muslims, today those same people have willingly endorsed me as their candidate for President of the European Parliament. That speaks volumes about the direction of travel, and we should keep encouraging them to move towards European ideals.
And even could you work with someone with Morten Messerschmidt, who is from the Danish People Party related and who gave a Hitler salute in 2007? How can you explain that?
2007. Today we are in 2014,
Wow.
and a movement of improvement for the better in anybody is something to be encouraged, and particularly when you're dealing with somebody who was as young as Morten was in 2007. If they have moved in this direction today, in a much more positive direction, then we should keep encouraging him to move in that direction.
Would you like to comment on this? Do you
Well,
think
let's
also
hope that the
7
change
years
will be
it's not
permanent.
too long?
Absolutely.
People can
I've
change?
known other people who have evolved from very extreme positions and have become more reasonable, growing older. And I hope that this will be a permanent change. And of course, well, there's many respectable people in ECR, and I have a long 5-year tradition of working with ECR in this parliament. And well, I know that even when you're a Eurosceptic, you can have ideas that contribute to making Europe better. Now, I believe, and that's probably a difference that I may have with members of your group, is that for a number of issues, think of climate change, of regulating finance, of making sure that those who have to pay taxes do pay them, so fighting against tax fraud and evasion, working just at national level is no longer efficient.
Or just about the euro.
You need the European Union to really go after those issues and meet the challenges of this century. So I agree when ECR is saying, well, we should have a future-oriented Europe, one that aims at solving the challenges of this century, not those of the past century. I agree with that. But let's recognize that without Europeans acting together, we're only 7% of the global population. That's not a lot. If we do not act together, we will be irrelevant. And that's the key thing. This is the reason why we are pro-European, but not pro-European at any cost or to do whatever.
So you will improve Europe. Your group will do with some parties as extreme right parties.
Our stated aim is to try and ensure that we have a Europe that allows nation states to work together on close cooperation on all of those issues that require close cooperation. And I recognize so much of what Philippe is saying about the areas where we need to have much closer cooperation. Of course, that is why we have constructed the European Union, but the direction of travel has got to be in accordance with what our people are willing to see constructed. At the moment, I see far too much of a push and a pull in a direction where our people simply are not willing to go at this moment in time.
So people are overacting when they compare your group as a populist group.
Well, I think there has been a desire in certain quarters right from the outset, 2004 onwards, to paint us in a certain way. And to an extent, that false picture was successful in certain ways. And also, I think what is quite clear after what happened in the election yesterday, the traditional old guard of the European Union, represented by the European People's Party, the Socialists and the Liberals, all came together in order to keep the reforming agenda at bay. That is the nature of what we are dealing with here. But for how long will you keep the people's voice outside of this chamber?
So with your group, maybe.
Sorry?
With your group, maybe.
Maybe what?
Maybe with your group you will change this old-fashioned
well, we're
parties
certainly trying,
yeah.
and
So
the established parties have got to hear loud and clearly that just because they are trying to block us, they are not going to stop the reformist agenda. We are going to keep working at it.
So the last word, Mr. Lambert, because we have to finish soon. So do you think that more conservatives in this European Parliament could change the next 5 years legislature?
Well, I consider the bloc of these three parties that constituted the majority as the real conservatives here in this parliament. I didn't see a lot of change, neither in the declaration of the European Council last week. When they nominated Juncker, they assorted it with a program that was basically business as usual. So we want to see change. So we may differ with ECR as to what kind of change we want to see, yet I'm convinced indeed that that bloc advocates business as usual in a time where we can no longer afford to do business as usual, neither on the institutional side, and that's a democratic question, nor on the policy making side, which is the social, economic and environmental issues.
Okay, so your last word before we end it, what are you expecting from this following months as top nominations, other top nominations?
No, I think the nominations will go through. Mr. Juncker's name will easily go through now in the Parliament, but we have got to look much more at the programmes now rather than personalities, as I said at the outset, and be absolutely clear. We do not have the benefit of time on our side. A very clear signal has been sent to us by the European people, and if the powers that be think that we can just simply sleep for the next 5 years and people are going to accept that, no, they won't. If this was a reactionary result, in 5 years' time, we're going to be in a much more difficult situation than we are today.
Yeah, so we're going to be more awake as well for the next 5 years.
I hope so.
Is that? Okay.
I hope so.
Thanks both of you for coming.
My pleasure.
And thanks all of you for following us. Bye.